Before we start the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now, let's go. Story 1. My cousin once told me a curious thing once. I don't believe in hell, he said. There is no kind of pain that a person can't get used to or even learn to appreciate. I've thought a lot about that. As long as we have the means to perceive our surroundings, we have the capability to appreciate it. If you've been on the internet long enough, you know what kind of absolutely vile things people have come to love. I don't believe I'm any different. It started back in 2016. I worked my second year as a lab assistant for a pharmaceutical company. A large Midwestern one with the blue sunflower logo. Lower end of the pay scale, high end of the benefits kind of gig. I didn't have that much going on in my life. It was just this endless cycle of overtime, sleep, and overtime again. I had an apartment on the third floor. Modern place with a huge elevator and reflective glass in hallways. They had a deal with the company and offered a rent cut for everyone who worked there, making it a sort of corporate hangout spot along with a home. I thought I was going to hate it, but I ended up appreciating it. But there was a fire. I don't know what started it, but it turned the first floor into an inferno. I was fresh out of the shower when it happened, barely covering myself with a towel. The alarms blared. It was so quick. You can feel the flames eating the air around you before you feel the heat. A hitch in your throat. It was hot enough for you to get boils by just stepping into the hallway. I tried making my way downstairs, while my neighbor across the hall locked himself in his apartment. Last I saw of him, he and his family peeked at me through a closing door, their eyes reflecting the spreading flames from downstairs. I didn't make it far. Everything looks different in the smoke, and I got turned around. I tried to push forward, but it was too late. I knocked on doors, begging for shelter, but no one answered. I ended up in the corner of the hallway, pushed up against the elevator, feeling the heated metal melt the outer skin off my hand. Your throat closes up. You can see heat build on your arms, boils bursting like poxes. And before you pass out, you dissociate. You don't really believe it's happening. I knew I should have panicked, but I just shrugged it off. It wasn't real. It was like another world, another me. It wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. I never experienced anything like it all my life. So it had to be a hallucination. But that's the thing about experiencing something for the first time. You don't realize what it is. That's the best way I can describe it. Dying. I was only out for a couple of seconds, maybe half a minute, before the firefighters found me. They dragged me out and wrapped me in a blanket. I had second-degree burns all over. Third degree in some places. Those hurt less. It burns through the nerves. You don't feel that until you start to recover. Waking up was unreal. I didn't understand that I'd been bandaged all over my head. I just thought they'd turned off the lights. I couldn't feel a thing, courtesy of a more than generous corporate health insurance and an even more generous dose of morphine. I remember someone talking to me, but I could barely hear them on one side. An eardrum had ruptured, and my left ear had fused to the side of my hairless head. "Oh, thank God," a voice said. "Thank God, you're gonna make it." My little sister, Sammy, she'd flown in from Ottawa. I was in and out of consciousness for days. I had nightmares about pain and anxiety about the drugs wearing off. Sometimes I'd hear machines beeping. Once, a nurse changed a bandage, and it felt like getting my skin torn off. I remember drawing in a breath to scream, and then just gone. Blackout. I get these glimpses of real life sometimes. Someone humming in the hallway. My sister talking on her phone. A beam of light hitting the bandage across my eye, tickling a damaged membrane. I prayed not to feel anything, because I knew that it'd just be more pain. Unbearable, mind-numbing agony. Your body turning inside and out, trying to heal everything at once, hitting biological dead ends over and over. I think it was night when someone came into my room. They talked to Sammy. They sounded apologetic. She cried. Then, a little later, someone else came into the room. They had something else to say. Her tone changed. "Hope, please," she said. "Whatever it takes." They roll me into an elevator and then outside. There was a mild breeze that stung like nails on my missing skin. Transport. Sammy calling out in the distance. "We'll take good care of him." The prick of a needle. I couldn't feel a thing. I was out for at least 36 hours. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed, looking up at the ceiling. No bandages covering my face. a soft gray membrane covering my left eye. I blinked it away and instinctively raised my arm to wipe it off. My arm was covered in a thick, dark, ink-like substance. It clung to me like a putty, but I could barely feel it. I'd never seen anything like it before. My entire body was covered in it. It was on my face too, even on my eyes. But it worked as a sort of one-way mirror. It didn't block my vision. The closer you looked, the more translucent it was. I was fine. No pain. No restricted movement. Nothing. I sat up, accidentally pulling out a couple of wires from my arm. I looked down at my body, only to see that all-covering ink putty dry up and sink into my skin, like morning dew on a dry lawn. Didn't feel a thing. Not even a tickle. A nurse came running just moments later, ready to get to work. Sammy was with her, but when they saw me standing there, it's like there was a cooling breeze seeping through the room. The tensions just melted away. I'd never seen my sister in that state before, her hair having thinned at the edges of her ear and the bags under her eyes looking purple. Her face sunken, like she'd forgotten how to smile. But seeing me, she lit up like dawn. She ran up to me with her arms open, but stopped. "Can I hug you?" she asked. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I said. "Yeah." So we hugged, and over her shoulder, I could see a corporate representative waiting for me in the hallway. If you're confused, just know that I was too. We're getting there. Information was spotty at best. Someone threw around a project called Black Bell. The name Superadaptive Nanoliquid was mentioned a couple of times. Basically, Sammy had given them the go-ahead to try a new treatment. I must have been on the candidate list since I was a loyal worker, and leaking company secrets would not only get me sued, but cost me my career. Part of the deal was weekly checkups and participating in their trials. I could quit if I wanted to, but chances were that I'd go right back to that hospital bed if the treatment wasn't completed. I didn't really have a choice, but I didn't blame them for it. They had their own interests to look out for, and I've been given this amazing opportunity. I could walk right out of there. That's worth an NDA. Coming back to the office a couple weeks later, there were some people talking about me. They said the treatment had been developed in one of our branch labs in Vietnam. It had been mentioned in a couple of memos as something tested in relation to vacuum treatment and low oxygen environments. I'd seen it too, but had no idea it had regenerative properties. I mean, you can read something on paper, but seeing it in action is another thing entirely. Most people didn't believe I'd really been in a fire. They thought I'd been taking time off, riding the coattails of an accident that consumed my apartment. I could have shown them pictures, but that would somehow made it even more unbelievable. I decided to let them think whatever they wanted. The higher-ups knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. So slowly but surely, I got back into that endless cycle of overtime and sleep. Sammy was sticking around for a while to make sure I managed, but apart from that, it was business as usual. Of course, what you see on the surface isn't always telling the whole story. I'd stay up at night, imagining that excruciating pain writhing just underneath the skin. What if there was a hiccup in the treatment, or some kind of side effect? Could all of it really come back? Could one wrong step send me back to the hospital bed? I'd lose hours of sleep worrying, looking up at the ceiling of my new bedroom, closing my eyes, but not sleeping. Still feeling the heat of the flames licking my skin, the hair on my arms curling up to die, little parts of me blending with the ashes, the smell of my own flesh cooking. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was 2 weeks into my new routine when I had my first panic attack. Someone brought in a birthday cake to work, and they blew out the candles over lunch. There was something about the faint glow of fire reflecting on their skin that sent a spiral of thoughts rushing through me. Heat. My pulse ran away from me. I could imagine my skin trying to sweat, but the pores being melted shut. The pain I imagined wasn't real, but the memories it brought on sent it all to the forefront of my mind. I politely declined a piece of cake and ran to the bathroom. I threw up and curled into a corner, forcing my eyes shut. But no matter how hard I tried, I felt the pain. A mild heat latching onto me, burying itself in my skin. You can't think away a panic attack. You just have to ride it out and wish the next one is shorter. Talking to Sammy about it over dinner, she decided to stick around for a few more weeks. I hadn't asked her to do it, but she was happy to. She made baked potatoes. I'd forgotten to buy new cutlery and plates, so we had to settle for paper plates and plastic forks. A single naked light bulb hung overhead. "You talk in your sleep, you know," she mentioned as the oven dinged. "I hear it through the walls." "What do I say?" "It's not really words, it's just like sounds," she said. "Long, drawn-out vowels. But it kind of sounds like words. I'll try to keep it down." She gave me an apologetic look. She knew I couldn't control it, and she knew I couldn't try even if I wanted to. But it was a nice thought. It got worse, though. I would have nightmares and wake up choking. I'd feel my skin getting warmer at night. My anxiety would pop off at seemingly random times, kicking me out of whatever comfort zone I'd managed to make for myself. It could strike fast and stick around all day. After a while, it was more unusual for me to have a good day than a bad one. Coming home from work one day, I stopped at a light. I sat in my car, hands on the wheels, seeing the light turn red as I came to a full stop. The radio jockey chuckled about putting on some classic dad rock for a caller and put on Kiss with the song Hotter Than Hell. It's a nice song, but it put my mind in an uncomfortable place. I stared at that red light, hoping I wouldn't see the yellow light. Something about the glow of it put me right back there in the hallway, squirming around on the floor. The meat on my hand getting cooked on the surface of the heated metal elevator door. I closed my eyes and felt something. A soft, cooling coat expanded across my skin. The treatment. It was still there. I remember someone honking. Maybe the light had turned green, but I couldn't risk looking. I couldn't open my eyes. Maybe it would hurt. Maybe it had all turned dark. 100 maybes, locking my hands on the steering wheel and keeping my eyes closed. Then, a flicker. It's like I manifested it. A spark reacting with my skin. Fire. It must have looked like an explosion. All the air getting sucked out at once, breaking the windows. The car popped from the released pressure as the entire car lit up. Ungodly pain. I couldn't scream. A single flame danced on my eyes as they fused shut. Nerve endings exploded with agony as the bones on my knuckles exposed themselves to the open air. It happened so fast, like someone shutting off the lights inside your mind, one by one. Sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch, thought. You can't breathe. There's no air. You don't know what you're doing. You can't feel yourself. Are you standing up? Sitting down? Impossible to tell. They say I was completely engulfed in flames for a solid 2 minutes before a passerby managed to pull me out of the wreckage. They said I was covered in a black liquid, which they thought was motor oil. I was dropped onto the pavement, and the flames were put out by bystanders. The treatment kept me alive through all of it. Alive, but suffering. It kept me on the edge of life, not allowing me to cross over, and the agony stuck with me for what felt like an eternity. But eventually, the sirens came. The EMTs would never hear of what would be a second miraculous burn victim recovery. I'd walk out of that hospital a couple of days later without any questions asked. The treatment put me right back to square one, perfect physical condition, with a couple of mental asterisks. While the firefighters didn't understand what had happened, the corporation did. Apparently, my ceaseless obsession with fire was triggering an adaptive reaction. Basically, I was tricking myself. By thinking so much about burning, it became the normal state of being, and the treatment adapted to it. It basically thought I wanted to burn, so it set me on fire. At least that's how it was explained to me. Knowing the cause of the issue helped, but also not. It's hard to put yourself in a state of mind where you're not allowing yourself to think certain things. It's like biting your nails or picking your nose. Thinking of how you can't do it makes it worse. Knowing that thinking too much about this one thing might cause a fire was as all-consuming as the flames themselves. Sammy didn't leave me, though. She figured out a couple of things we could do to alleviate stress. For example, I could start sleeping in the bathtub, and we could remove anything flammable. No drapes, no plastics. We also kept a fire blanket nearby. It was uncomfortable, but you can get used to anything. It was nice to know that it was there in case I needed it. A precaution. It puts you at ease, and you stop obsessing over it as much. I'd go to weekly checkups. They had me fill out forms, rating sensations and experiences on scales from 1 to 10, and rarely to often. A lot of it was generalized questions, but a couple of them were specifically made for me. These questions didn't have a standard answering sheet. There'd be some overpaid academic listing off questions with a nonchalant smile. Every week, a different smile, but the same attitude. I got the impression that I wasn't the only one testing this treatment. The questions they asked implied that others were having trouble as well, but in completely different ways. Multiple choice questions like, how often do you forget to breathe? How often do you forget to sleep? How much has your sense of touch diminished? With possible answers ranging from hourly to monthly. I made more adjustments in my everyday life. Fire blankets, extinguishers. Once I filled the tub with water before sleeping, as I felt an episode coming on. The ink would seep out of my skin to keep me from going hypothermic. It really was adaptive. Sammy did her best to help, but something she said stuck with me. As I was heading to work, she took some time cleaning out the tub. I asked her if she was okay doing that. It's not that different from changing bandages, she said. You gotta adapt either way. At least there's no pain, right? Trauma seeps into you like a poison. The bad days become the new normal, and the good days become this impossible ideal you strive to get. That perfect day without that sinking feeling in your chest, where you can sleep a little longer without waking up tired, where you can say you had a nice dream and can afford to put some effort into caring for yourself. Have that extra long shower, the freshly pressed clothes. But I couldn't do that. I'd be balancing on the edge, ready to burst into flames. I wouldn't wear my best clothes. I'd stay in the tub at night. I would keep my distance from my sister and my coworkers. All these little things you do to keep yourself from becoming a problem. And even then, things would spiral out of control. It happened once as I was going from the supermarket to my car. I don't even know what made me snap. Suddenly, it was all just fire. I burned all my groceries and was left exposed in the parking lot, covered in ash and writhing in pain. It was a short enough burn for my nerves to stay, making me feel every boil and crack in the skin, blood and soot on the concrete. The most embarrassing time it happened was at work. I felt it coming, and I hid in the bathroom again. As the flames burst out, the fire alarm tripped. Sprinklers came on. I got a nasty burn, but not as bad as the other times. I could still walk out of there. I draped myself in a jacket and had to walk out in front of all my coworkers, naked from the waist down and covered in boils. After that, I was put on paid leave while my treatment continued. We were going to work out an action plan with a therapist, but they had some trouble getting one that was accessible at this level of corporate secrecy. So while it dragged on, all I could do was wander around and try my best not to think of something that could burn my house down at a moment's notice. It was getting to me, and I suspect to Sammy as well. One night, it happened in the bath. I had an awful dream, which shook me right awake. The bathroom was pitch black. Despite my eyes being open, it was dark that it spiraled into this thought of my eyes having fused shut. It pushed that first domino in my chest, and by the time I got out of the bath, I was on fire, casting crawling shadows along the walls. Sammy came running. She tried to help, but ended up burning her hands. I pushed her away, giving her another burn on her neck. I pulled myself into the bath and turned on the water. It's hard to do when you don't have any skin on your fingers. Blood is slippery, and the knobs in the shower could be a bit finicky. The fire alarm was going crazy, but Sammy managed to turn it off. Concerned neighbors came knocking at the door, and she had to turn them away with a bleeding neck and hands. And I just lay in the bath, watching the last embers on my skin disappear, putting me back in the soothing dark. I locked the door, begging for the night to be over. Things got complicated after that. Of course, Sammy didn't want to leave, but the bandages on her neck and hands broke my heart. The way she winced as she made herself a peanut butter jelly sandwich, the salt stinging her wounds. I lied to her and said the company was bringing over a live-in care provider. It wasn't completely untrue. It had been discussed. In passing, I waved goodbye to Sammy from the kitchen window. A cab drove off with her, and I could finally relax. She was out of harm's way. My way. I tried to deal with my anxiety in other ways. I went out a lot. Booze helps a bit, especially if there's a lot of distractions. Live bands playing loud music. Pretty girls waving their long hair around. Anything to get the finger in your mind away from that first domino that sends you spiraling into oblivion. I thought I could make something fun out of it. Once when I got really drunk, I tried showing it as a party trick to a couple of barflies. They thought I was kidding around, that that I was some kind of fire breather or something. So when I willingly set myself on fire, they were horrified. They didn't know about my treatment, so when the dark ink covered my skin, it looked like I'd been turned into coal. Their eager twisted as they ran screaming back into the bar. One of them called the police. Another fainted. They covered their noses, trying not to breathe in my fumes. I locked my knees into place, forcing my body to stay upright past the snapping musculature. My head dangled as my neck gave out. I fell face first into a puddle, but the treatment stopped me from suffocating. An inch of water, it would have killed me. By the time a patrol arrived, I was long gone, leaving my tattered clothes in a black pile. I knew the roads well enough. I didn't care anymore. Coming home that night, I considered my options. I could keep going down this path, hoping something would change. Or I could struggle and kick my way through a life lived on the precipice of pain. No matter what I did, there'd always be that fear brewing in the back of my mind, reminding me that I was never far away from the gates of my own hell. I sat on my balcony for a while, looking up at the stars. There was something beautiful there, a kinship. They burned too, but they hadn't known another life. Perhaps that was the way to go. The next day, I took my car and drove into the desert. I parked and left a note. No valuables. I hid the keys under the front tire, stripped down, and put my clothes under the hood. There was no point in them getting burned. I want a fresh pair when I got back. If I got back, then I walked. I felt the sun on my skin, and I sensed the heat boiling at the edge of my mind. Come on, I muttered. Come on. I made myself think of it. I forced myself into it. I kicked myself down the black spiral in my mind and let the impressions take over. Come on, I begged. Get over with. And when the flames came, I was relieved. I just let it happen. The fires burning my eyes shut and sucking the air out of my lungs. My body crackling and popping, breaking at the seams with every twist and turn. Your senses disappear. You can't scream. And with the treatment keeping me alive, I locked myself in a spiraling struggle as my body was repaired and burned over and over. Acrid flesh, ammonia, and burnt hair coming and going as my sense of smell circled. Flashes of light as my corneas struggled to remain. A violent tinnitus coming and going like a screaming wave crashing into my skull. Never-ending pain. The kind of agony where a second turns into lifetimes. But it was too late. There was no one coming to save me. What I'd done? You don't really taste anything. There might be little spots of blood, leaving an impression of iron on your tongue, but it came and went. Same with touch. It would be pain or nothing. After a while, I stopped trying to breathe. I let my throat stay closed, and the treatment would keep me alive. I would feel my heart slowing, adapting. I realized that if I was calculated, I could make micro movements in bouts of muscular repair. Meaning if I tried long enough, I could move, but only so slightly. I remember laying in the sand. The flashes of light were darker. It must have been night. I'd managed to move my hand straight into view, so I could see my own fingers. There'd be darkness, a little light from the moon, a flash of clarity, showing a coal-wrapped skeletonized hand. Liquidized boiled fat staining the black sands around me. I tried to think, but even my brain was affected. There'd be long stretches of time where I sensed this gate in the back of my head, barring me from chasing any complicated thoughts. I couldn't remember my name. I could just think of something short and immediate, bursts of effort and strain. As my lungs came and went, I could think of sounds to make. Vowels, mostly. I settled on a couple that I found easy to repeat, just to remind myself that I was alive. Endo sounded particularly nice. Eo, Eo, Eo. As I couldn't see or hear anything, my mind started to fill in the blanks. The waves of painful screeching in my ear started to sound like voices and music. The flickering lights began to look like angels. I would have conversations with them, and the pain would lull into a background noise, a nuisance at most. I'd have these presences sit down next to me. One had a voice like a beautiful piano, talking sonatas that would make me weep. Another would lie down next to me and wrap their arms around me, their breath on my neck like a soothing wind. They'd whisper of beautiful places in far-off lands. A beach where no one is alone. An island paradise where the sands are pink. A tree that reaches for the moon. wanting to go home. Little stories and melodies playing in the fire, begging me to stay. I could feel my needs melting away. When you're at the bottom of every sensation, there's no point in trying to look up. What's a glass of water when your world is on fire? What's a night of sleep when you're living in a nightmare? I let it all go, embracing the pain. It was so easy. After a while, I realized I could direct my efforts like managing a switchboard. Keep the eyes off, I'd think. Keep the eyes and the ears off. Instead, I'd focus on the muscles, keeping me at intense pain levels but allowing me to move, to touch. I don't know if anyone saw me. I don't think they did. But if anyone had seen me, they'd have seen a charred body rise from the ashes, facing the moon. I'd wander the sands, inviting the pain into the soles of my feet. I didn't care about stepping on branches or rocks. I'd feel the wind fanning the flames, fueling me like an engine. The more I moved, the more it hurt, and the more I could keep going. And as I moved, air would push into my lungs, leaving me with enough room to scream. And with that, I'd howl at the moon like a beast, yo. Eo, Eo. Time would pass, and it wouldn't. Your days don't really start or end. It all just keeps going. What was real and what wasn't would be blurred, making me chase thoughts I didn't know I had. I'd make up words that even a burned mouth could say, borrowing meaning from whispers in the fire. Words with depth and power that I'd forget in a second or an hour. There was no way to tell. I would imagine other burning people walking alongside me. Sometimes I would see them dancing at the edge of my vision. Long, elegant movement with trails of smoke puffing into the sky. Little lights allowing themselves to burn out and die. I'd cry for them, laugh at them, and all the while, I suffered. But that was normal. I'd fall to my knees and stay there, smoldering, not moving an inch. I'd give in to the thoughts that trickled into sparks of consciousness, becoming a conduit to whatever spoke through me. Vowels trickling past broken teeth, a prayer perhaps. My most vivid memory is that moment when I'm kneeling in the sand. Even with my eyes closed, I could tell I wasn't in our world anymore. I was in a world of fire, praying to an ocean of molten steel. Another dead man propped up to suffer. Eo, Eo, Eo. The burning angels would listen and dance. The ocean of pain would soothe me. There was no heat anymore, it was home. I'd finally reached the other side of the shore, where pain was life and being without it was agony. I'd adapted. I learned. I'd been perfected, and I came home. I opened my eyes. They'd followed me through. A dozen others, wielding the same black ink across their bodies. They'd adapted too. They'd been made tall and strong and mad. They'd wandered other worlds, exposed to other horrors, and they'd been made grateful, just like me. Brothers, sisters, a family carved from agony and blisters. I'd go from ecstasy to ceaseless horror. It felt like time had stopped and that I was settling into a strange eternity. One where complete inaction was the only logical thing to pursue. Turning myself static, I could feel what that first fire had felt, warming our ancestors. I was on the wrong side of life, looking out at those struggling. I was beyond them, but something in me was still too human to accept it. But I was getting there, and it was so comfortable. A life without worries means a life without drive. But is that such a bad thing? Then a drop of water. I didn't feel the first one, but as the rain gathered, the flames died. I've been in pain so long that being without it made me sick. All those little systems of my body that I'd forgotten or cast away coming back to me. Eyes, ears, taste, each and every one more terrible than the other. I cried and begged the heavens to send me back. But I was forgetting the right words, and the broken spots in my brain were coming back to me. The heavens couldn't hear me, and I couldn't make them listen. I lay there for hours, hoping I would dream myself back to that other world where I belonged. But I'd lost it. My car had been towed. People had looked for me, but they hadn't found me. All in all, I figured I'd been gone for a couple of days at most. Turns out, it was 16 days in total. A lot of people thought I'd been kidnapped or killed. And for the second time in less than a year, Sammy would see me come back from the dead. The treatment was deemed too dangerous. They didn't specify why. Maybe the discussion with the therapist got a little out of hand, when I started to talk about ink-covered angels. Or maybe it was my desire to put myself back on fire. Either way, they had a kill switch to deactivate the entire thing, and they used it. Made me cough up something akin to a metal glob. They put it on a metal tray and moved it to a liquid nitrogen container with a stylized blue sunflower logo. It was strange looking at the treatment like a separate physical thing. It had been part of me, and losing it felt like removing a vestigial organ. I know I should have felt different once it was off, but I didn't. I still had the same thoughts, the same problems. But now that I thought about the fires, I didn't know whether to long for them or cower in fear. Maybe both. At least I didn't have to worry about hurting anyone. I was still on paid leave. I moved in with Sammy for a while just to get a change in environment. I met some new people and grounded myself a bit. It's so easy to lose sight of the little things when your mind is in 10 different places. Sometimes you don't need much to make your day. A pat on the shoulder, a cool drink after a long day. The little things could do wonders. I eventually made my way back home. I returned to the office. I got a new place that didn't have a bathtub. I started talking to people without shying away, and I'd keep my eyes on the traffic lights when I came to a full stop. I'd cross the line where pain didn't scare me anymore. When you have known what I know, everything else seems dull in comparison. And if push comes to shove, I've lived through the worst of it. I wouldn't mind seeing it again someday. This was years ago, and my life looks very different today. I'm engaged, and I live in a new town. New job, same company. I got a dog. But even now, as all things lull into a new normality, I think of those days. On the darkest nights, I can picture those ink-covered beings out there, watching over me from afar, waiting for me to remember and come home. I fear I might still have a part of me stuck in that place. That someday I'll just snap, and I don't know what's worse, to be paralyzed by fear or to long for it. Much like my cousin, I don't believe in hell. I don't think we can suffer forever. And sometimes when it rains, I long to burn. Story 2. A couple years ago, I was in uni. I had a bad habit of drinking, but I never thought it would cause any harm. I was wrong. My parents are very conservative due to their religion. Good thing I was able to go to another city to start studying, but this led to me drinking even more. Beatrice, my younger sister, knew it, but never told our parents since we always kept each other's secrets from them. My memory is not very reliable here, so I'm mostly telling what people told me about this day, but I was at a party at a friend's house and drank more than usual. I had to go home and went there with my car, so I started driving it even if I knew it was dangerous. I brought up a friend, Mike, with me in the car too, since he lived near me. I didn't really care about the danger. I did that before and it was fine. Surely this time won't be different. But it was different. We don't know exactly why, but I drove out of the road in a bridge, and the car fell in the river below. That night, I suffered permanent brain damage due to the impact and minutes underwater. Mike managed to get out of the hospital in a couple weeks, but I wouldn't wake up no matter what. Soon the doctors realized that I was in a deep coma and could stay in vegetative state for years. My family was told about the possibility of me never waking up, and needless to say, it was a shock. Beatrice was still in high school, and my parents had been putting a lot of expectations on me. They would make anything, really anything, to wake me up, but ironically they could not make anything, so I was kept like that for nearly 4 years. My parents would visit me frequently, always with the same depressed mood. They didn't want Mike to visit me, but apparently he wanted to. There were several events where nurses caught him trying to sneak past everyone and enter my room. That pattern was, however, broken down a single time when my mom entered the hospital very happy, saying she found a solution, that she could make all of this end. At the time, my dad and Beatrice were worried that she could want to kill me, or that she was getting mad, but nothing really happened, and very quickly things got to the normal. Maybe she was referring to another thing, but she refused to tell anyone what all of that was about. We don't really know why or how, but I did wake up in a few weeks after that incident. I was really weird at first, even for the doctors. I literally just woke up as if it was a regular morning. No previous signs of change. It was a sudden, unexpected thing. I'm not sure that was a normal thing. The doctor said that sometimes people just wake up, just like me, but they still seemed a bit confused, as if I was actually expected to never wake up. I had to stay in a hospital for some time still to know if everything was really okay. My family obviously was extremely excited to know that I finally wasn't unconscious anymore. Beatrice started to tell me about all of the things she did in these 4 years in the first visit, even already telling me some secrets like Vanessa, her girlfriend, that had to be kept away from our parents since they would try to find a way to separate them, no matter how good was their relationship. However, my mom didn't seem that excited. She did smile a lot, but I could feel something off. While I was at the hospital waiting to be able to go back home, I started noticing a few things, but I initially thought it could be just me getting back to reality after so much time in coma. Even if I spent years in bed, causing muscle atrophy, I didn't feel weak. Instead, I felt revigorated. I also wouldn't feel hungry when my meal was delayed. I didn't feel tired or sleepy at night, and often would just pretend to be sleeping. My arms and hands would shake, slightly but consistently. I would suddenly feel a shiver down my spine, followed by a strong sensation of cold, as if my whole body was being frozen, and my mouth would pick a terrible metallic taste, just for it to suddenly go back to normal after a couple seconds. Eventually, I got the pass to go home, and as soon as I could, I tried talking to Mike, since at this point I knew about all the incidents. My parents didn't let me leave home at first, so I had to lie about going for a walk to see the city and what changed. I'd already messaged Mike, and he really wanted to see me in person, not just by the phone. As soon as I got to the coffee shop he suggested, he jumped out of the chair and hugged me strongly. Backslash. Oh my F backslash asterisk backslash asterisk backslash asterisk ing God. You are actually alive. I don't know why, but I felt uncomfortable with that sentence. Backslash, I guess I am. We spent the following hour or two talking, mostly about Mike's life and what happened during these years. At some point, he asked me backslash, do you think you'll be able to ever drink again? I mean, I don't drink any alcohol after that day. I didn't really know what to answer. My rational side agreed that after what happened, I shouldn't drink anymore, but I didn't feel scared about it happening again. I thought for a couple seconds and answered, jokingly backslash, well, I didn't drink any alcohol during this time either. He clearly noticed the delay and me avoiding to actually answer the question, but laughed at the joke. It started getting late, so we decided that this was enough for the day. He went home, and I actually decided to go to a bar. Mike's question really left me wondering, so I wanted to see if I could drink. I asked for a shot of vodka. After staring at it for a while, waiting to see if any fear would emerge, nothing really happened, so I just drank it. Strangely, it didn't burn as much as I expected. After a couple minutes, I didn't feel any effect. I asked for another shot, but again, nothing really changed. This was very weird to me, since even before the accident when I was a heavy drinker, 2 shots were enough to at least start feeling something, but now, after 4 years of abstinence, I wouldn't feel any difference. After this, I just decided to go home. I was reasonably far and on foot, so I shouldn't waste more time. At home, my parents were already worried, telling me I should have gone back earlier. While I was lying about what I've done, I said I went to Leo's Burgers, a crappy restaurant that we used to go when I was in high school. My dad interrupted me and said that the place closed last year. My mom took a deep breath and asked me if I was with Mike. I couldn't really answer since I got nervous pretty quickly. She just left the room and went to the bedroom. I was expecting some huge thing yelling at me for that, but she didn't. She did seem very angry, but the lack of action was weird. My dad did the discourse I was expecting and decided to go to talk to Mom. Beatrice looked at me with what I can only describe as sad and sorry. She always did that when our parents were mad at me, as if she wished that it was her instead of me, so I could still be okay. I also went to bed and started pretending to sleep. After a couple hours, I heard my door opening and, after some time, closing. After that, I heard whispers coming from the living room that was in front of my bedroom. It was faint, but I could still hear it. I tried to understand it, but it was hard to pick even a single word. I did notice that it was my mom's voice, though. After some time, she started singing, still very softly. I also picked up a smell I don't know exactly how to describe. It was similar to smoke, but also with a trace of rotten eggs and maybe blood. I'm not sure. I never felt that smell before. However, it was very weak. Maybe it was not even there. Eventually, she stopped. It felt awkwardly silent after all that sh/*T. I wasn't sure if that really happened. Doctors did tell me I had brain damage, Maybe this means I could be experiencing things that aren't really real. In the following morning, I tried to talk to her about that, but before I could say anything about it, she was giving me good morning, as if the mic thing on the day before hadn't happened. I just decided not to bother talking about, since at this point I was not even sure about that whole thing happening. My dad was still somewhat mad, and that actually made me feel a bit better. Maybe I wasn't hallucinating completely yet. I tried messaging Mike to ask him about this, but he didn't answer. I was not even sure he got the messages. I decided to ask Beatrice about the behavior of my mom, but she said she didn't notice anything like what I described. After a few days, a former uni colleague told me that Mike died. He had a heart attack. That's why he never received my messages. I was deeply intrigued by that, and immediately remembered the weird behavior of my mom on that night. This was a Sunday, so she and my dad would go to the church. I decided to ask Beatrice to help me look on our mother's things. She wasn't really believing me that anything was weird, but agreed. After some time searching on her books, I felt something weird about a particular one. The cover said Alternative Methods of Prayer for the Sick. It had a dark, brown cover, as if it was a Bible or something. / What about this one? I said, / seems extra boring. / yes, but I don't know, the sick, like me, / ugh, okay then. The pages were thin and slightly yellow. It seemed mostly like a book to get money from people in bad situations, giving useless advice for multiple sickness. However, as we passed for more pages, things started going increasingly daunting. At some point, it had an image with text written in a language I don't know. I tried quickly looking up online different languages and how they looked, but none seemed to match that. After that, some paragraphs starting also be in that same script, and eventually the whole thing was covered with symbols I've never seen, and didn't seem to be from any language I could find online. Later, there was a page with a drawing, almost a painting, of a group of people dancing around a skeleton. This skeleton is standing up, dancing too. In another, someone being stabbed in the chest by an unsettling figure. This figure didn't seem to have a human head, but instead it was more similar to a goat. Beatrice was visibly scared. She gave a few steps back after seeing this last image. I wasn't really sure how to do after seeing her like that. I tried to think about something to say, but all I could say was / let's just stop messing with Mom's things. She took a few moments to react. She just nodded her head in confirmation, and we started to pack things back to where they were. I decided to make this message because I have no / *********** ing clue what's going to happen. To me, to Beatrice, to Dad, to Mom. I can't even fully understand what's going on. I think I'm scared too. / Creator's notes. This is my first / Nosleep story, so I'd like some feedback. I'm not sure how obvious it is, but English is not my native language. I hope my mistakes didn't make it unbearable or break the immersion too much. Also, I took some considerable inspiration from Hereditary. Story 3. She's in the walls, he said. I paused, not ready to jump to any conclusions. I've had clients say the craziest things, only for it to turn out to be something mundane, misunderstood. You think I'm having difficulty telling reality apart from fantasy? He continued, a tinge of spite in his tone. I blinked. Then I remembered. In one of our past sessions, he had shared some pretty implausible tales, like how he was a master of black magic. He had talked about the hexes he had successfully cast in the past. I had gently probed his narrative, wanting to see how real his belief was to him. He must have realized I had doubted his grasp of reality. I'm just curious. What do you mean by she's in the walls? I asked, keeping my expression pleasant, calm. He could still be talking about something perfectly normal, like a rat, a lizard. After I killed her, I placed her body behind the walls and bricked them up again. Okay, he wasn't leaving much room for doubt. Are you saying that you killed the woman you've been having nightmares about? As I spoke, I flicked open up the web WhatsApp window on my screen and typed a quick text to the clinic manager. Potentially dangerous client, stand by for emergency protocols. He nodded. The bad dreams started a day after I killed her and sealed her behind the walls. He proceeded to tell me what he had been unwilling to tell me in our session last week. He told me how he had felt something strange stir within him when he had first caught sight of this woman. She worked near him. It wasn't love. It was a fascinated contempt, a horrified disgust. He couldn't take his mind off her and followed her. Everywhere. He figured out her schedule, who she would meet, places she would go. He finally got her alone one day, down a route she occasionally took while going for her early morning runs. He didn't have any brilliant plan in mind, and so he just struck her in the back of the head as she ran by, with a rock he kept in his pocket. She had fallen. He had simply scooped her up and carried her to his car parked nearby. No one was around to witness it in the wee hours of the morning. Still hoping for some normalcy, I tried to formulate what this could really be about. Maybe he needed attention. Maybe he liked to shock and awe others with outlandish tales. I mean, carrying an unconscious woman to his car? That couldn't be as easy as he made it out to be. Maybe you want to test me. See how I would react to a wild tale of murder, right? Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because of the nightmares. They wouldn't stop. I try not to tell you about it, to just work through the nightmares without context. But I realize I need you to know, so you can give me proper help. There was a dead, earnest look in his eyes. Suddenly, I believed him. I could no longer try to poke holes in his story. This man meant every word he said. Call the police, tell them a client just confessed to murder. Might be dangerous right now. Get them down here. I typed on the WhatsApp chat, pretending to be taking notes. I had to break confidentiality at that point. It was legal protocol. The nightmares, yes. Tell me more about them. You said they were vivid, that you would wake up screaming. What did you dream about? I asked, hoping to stall him until the police came. I was honestly also a little curious. He hadn't been willing to tell me the contents of his nightmares last week. Just her face, right in front of mine. She would start off looking terrified, the way she looked when I slit her throat, then she would grin. A wicked grin. She was a wicked, evil woman. I fought the urge to raise an eyebrow. She was a wicked woman. That was your sense in the dream? I gave myself a pat on the back for keeping my tone clear of the disbelief and contempt I felt. He slit her throat, but she was evil? Holy shit. She was always evil. I knew that. So I did what I needed to do. What the world needed me to do. He smiled brightly at me and winked. My stomach churned. It was a knowing wink, like we had some shared secret. I kept quiet, and he went on with his tale. He told me about 5 minutes worth of the story before the police came. He said he knew she was evil from the dark aura he could see. He stalked her to make sure and saw the horrible things she did to others. She was condescending, manipulative, rude, and a bully. He spat the word bully like it singed his lips to say it. Despite myself, I noted his reaction down in my clinical notes, flinched at the word bully. Has been bullied. He got rid of her, hid her body in the walls of some deserted building. He told me the building name. I knew it. I lived near it. I had watched dozens of stores open and shut down within months at that place. No one knew why business was so bad there. The location wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. But it was infamous for being bad luck for shop owners. It was in the process of being sold to a new owner for redevelopment. But I hear her now, he said, fear flickering in his eyes. When I lie awake late at night, she scratches at my walls. I know she's not in there. I know where she lies. But the scratching, it wouldn't stop. The door opened then, and 2 police officers stepped in. I was relieved that they had the sense not to sound the sirens or kick up a fuss before entering the room. I had been worried that my client would be triggered once alerted to the police's arrival. I didn't want him to hold me hostage or something. They cuffed him and took him away. He turned to face me right before they let him out the door. There was a look of calm and satisfaction on his face, like he had expected me to call the police, like he knew what would happen, and as if he wasn't afraid of the consequences. Once again, he smiled. My insides curled. I headed down to the police station and gave them all the details my client had told me about the murder. Once I got home, I took a shower and downed some wine. It was a wild day. I was ready to put it behind me and get back to normal. I slept fitfully. There were flitting images of my client in my dreams. His look of satisfaction, his knowing wink. There was also a persistent scratching sound that I couldn't locate. The next day, awake but in a fog, I was called back to the station. How did you know Anita, not the real name, was the first question I was asked. My brows furrowed. I knew only one Anita. Why were they asking about my crazy ex-boss? She was my employer for a short while. I responded. I worked for her a few years back for less than a year. Did you part on bad terms? I bit my lip. Why was the investigator asking about this out of the blue? There was a sinking sensation in my gut. Yes, she was difficult to work for. When I quit, she blew her top, threatened me. Why are you asking about her? I had a terrible feeling I knew the answer. Did you kill Anita? My mouth went dry. I stared at him in disbelief, but his face was an impassive mask. No, shit. The woman in the walls. Then how did you know the location of her body? I gaped at him. The woman he killed. It was Anita, wasn't it? He's saying he has no idea what you're talking about. That you hypnotized him last session. Did something to his mind. He's been having nightmares ever since. The fuck? I stared at the officer, mouth open. Hey, right now, it's he said, you said. We're just trying to figure things out. But I've got to say, that man has no connection to Anita at all. No one spotted him near her. Not even a text, a phone call, nothing. You, on the other hand, he sighed. You worked for her. You were open about your dislike for her. We saw some of your posts on social media. Subtle, vague, but quite clearly targeted at her. Posts? Social media? I hated Anita, sure. But posting about her? I didn't have that kind of guts. She was a terrifying, cunning bitch. She had considerable influence in our industry. She could make life pretty tough for me, as she had made it for many others. I had no wish to invite further backlash. The officer pulled out his phone, tapped on it for a bit, then showed it to me. Posts from a social media account with my name on it, even my face. But it wasn't my account. I told the officer so. This account has been active for the past 2 years, he said. For 2 years, it has been posting intermittently under your identity, and you've never been informed or aware about it. I grabbed his phone again and looked at the account more closely. It has 43 followers. Come on, and I bet none of them are my friends. How could I have found out about it? It's not like I obsessively Google my name or something. The officer took his phone back. He remained expressionless. The next 2 hours of interrogation were brutal. I told him in minute detail all that I could remember about my employment under Anita, the fallout, the following months of insults, and her attempts to blackball me. How her attempts failed, because by then, many in the industry knew her reputation. I even admitted to going for therapy sessions to deal with the trauma from it all. He said he might subpoena my therapist for clinical notes, but whatever. I didn't say anything crazy during those therapy sessions. I couldn't exactly be completely open and honest in sessions with fellow therapists. After all, we might still one day cross paths in our work. My could have been alibi. The doorbell camera just so happened to be disconnected on the night she was murdered. I hadn't even noticed. I only checked the footage whenever something cropped up, like this investigation. I had gone to the park nearby for a walk that night, when I was supposedly murdering Anita. I told the police, and they went around the neighborhood, looking for surveillance footage from shops, car dash cams, and witnesses who may have seen me. But there was nothing. By then, it was abundantly clear. I was being set up. Somehow, that client had been planning to murder Anita for years. He had been setting me up for years. It all looked bad for me. My history with Anita, my knowledge of exactly where she was hidden, how she died, the social media post, which somehow had its IP tied into my Wi-Fi. I cursed myself for having a predictable Wi-Fi password. Wi-Fi password. The client claimed that he had never spoken about Anita, or any murder, that he had recently come back for help with nightmares related to a past memory he hadn't told me about, that I had hypnotized him. It was EMDR. I just let him access the memory related to the nightmares without telling me what it was, and did EMDR with him, letting his eyes follow my fingers as he accessed the traumatic memories. It was far from hypnosis. It was a legit tool to help with traumatic experiences. It was bilateral stimulation. It was nothing like hypnosis. The asshole had twisted everything. He told the police I made his nightmares worse, and that he didn't know what happened during our most recent session. Said he had been dazed by my hypnosis when the police came. It's incredible how easily someone can destroy your life if they choose to. 1 minute, I had my life together, more or less. Next, I was under suspicion of murder. I originally thought being innocent would clear my name quickly, but turns out that's not how the legal system works. Things only got worse. The night I got home after the interrogation, I downed a bottle of wine. Then I lay in bed, trying to sleep, to get some respite from the nightmare that my life was morphing into. A scraping sound roused me to full alertness. Another scraping sound. It was like something scratching. There was something scratching behind my walls. My heart skipped a bit, and my breath caught in my throat. Hesitantly, gingerly, I pressed my ear to the wall. The scratching was loud, like nails on drywall. It felt like something was scratching a centimeter from my ear. I jerked away from the wall and sank back down on my bed, my limbs weak. There was another sound. Was it a whisper? I couldn't tell. It was faint, covered by the scratching sounds. I was imagining things, I told myself. The investigation was fraying my nerves. The wine had muddled my sanity. I thought of fleeing to a hotel for the night, but the police had told me to stay where I was. I didn't want to look like I was running away. I got back into bed and shut my eyes. I was imagining things, I repeatedly told myself. The scratching continued. There was no way I could sleep. An agonizing few minutes later, a soft humming started up. It rose in volume until it resembled static, or the type of sound a white noise machine might produce. The static began to overwhelm even the sounds of scratching. I tried to sit up then, to get out of the house, consequences be damned. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed. I couldn't even open my eyes. I struggled desperately, straining with every fiber of my being, screaming silently to the point where I thought my lungs would burst. But I couldn't move a single muscle, couldn't make the slightest sound. Then I dreamt, or I think I did. I saw her behind my closed lids. Anita knelt before me, begging for her life. An arm reached out. Mine. I grabbed Anita by her arm and hit her in the side of her already bleeding head with a rock. She collapsed to the ground, like a puppet with its strings cut. I stood over her, grinning. A knife glinted. A knife that I held. I realized I knelt down and placed the knife against Anita's throat. I couldn't stop it. Couldn't will my hand to stop. Couldn't wipe the grin from my face. Something rushed me from the side. I toppled over. You killed me. Someone was screeching. I looked around frantically. A dark energy like a swirling cloud. A flash of a maniacal smile from something within. You killed me, and you'll pay. The dark mass swept towards me. I screamed, fended whatever was off with my arms. Silence. I looked around. Nothing was around me. No dark cloud. But Anita was there, a pool of blood spreading beneath her neck. I looked down. The knife in my hand was covered with blood. I woke up screaming. My shirt was soaked with perspiration. The police came for me a few hours after that. They told me they had found my prints. On her arm, right where I'd seen myself grab her in the dream. I can't explain it anymore. I know for a fact, I know with all my being, that I didn't do it. I didn't snap, split from reality, nothing. I remember the night she died. I was home. I got bored and went for a walk in the park. I went home after my 45 minutes of brisk walking was up. I was trying to keep fit, but the dreams, the posts, the scratching in my walls. He had set me up, sure, but how could he have accessed my bedroom walls? My dreams? They arrested me. I was held for weeks before a judge finally granted me bail. I was to be on house arrest until my case was tried. No flight risk, a stable career, good community relations, no priors. I was lucky to get bail, they said. I didn't feel lucky at all. I got one text from that client in all this time. Do you know what's real? I had stared, confused, for a moment before I flung the phone onto the sofa in anger. Was that what this was all about? Was he doing this to me because I had made some comments that suggested he might have broken from reality? Did he seek sessions with me just to set me up? Did he ever even need therapy? I retrieved my phone within a minute. Once I realized I could screenshot the text as evidence. But the text was gone, evaporated into thin air. Maybe I really don't know what's real. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I'm stuck at home for the next 2 months. Maybe longer if there are delays in getting the case to court. My life is over. My reputation is in tatters. And still, every night, the scratching goes on. The nightmares keep coming. I wake screaming every night. Anita's face, contorted sometimes in rage, sometimes in agony. My clients grin. The dreams are so vivid they're starting to feel like memories. Maybe I should just give in. Say I did it. Plead guilty. Hope for the death sentence. Because I can't live like this anymore. http://reddit.com/r/theta-rkcs. Story 4. I was only 12 when Adam passed away. I remember his death with crystal clarity. It's my punishment for failing to save him. We were playing in the woods behind our house, venturing much further than our parents allowed when it happened. The incident that changed both of our lives forever. Hey Max, do you think gorillas could talk? You know, like if they really tried 100%. That question still sticks out of my mind. Such an odd thing to ask, but he was only 10 years old, so I can't fault him for it. No, I said, staring into the canopy overhead. They would have done it already. Well, what if, whoa, look at that. Adam shouted, pointing his finger. I looked in its direction, and I could immediately make out what appeared to be a ravine. A deep cut entrenched into the earth. To a couple of preteen boys, that was like discovering a new continent. Adam raced over to it without a second's hesitation. I followed suit, albeit a bit more hesitantly. Adam and I stood at the edge of the crevice, peering into the darkness within. It seemed deep, probably 30 or 40 feet if I had to guess. Even in the evening light peppering the ground through the trees, we couldn't see the bottom. Max, go get a rock. I want to see how what happened next has haunted me for the last 13 years of my life. I watched helplessly as the ground Adam was standing on crumbled away. His eyes grew wide and frantic, and all the color drained from his face in the split second that the realization hit him. He desperately flailed his arms, searching for something, anything to grab onto, but ultimately he found nothing. I was such a coward. I was in so much shock that I couldn't move. I could only look on as Adam fell. If only I'd reacted quicker. If I had just snatched his hand in time, I could have saved him. Instead, I'm left with the constant reminder of my inaction. Time seemed to slow as Adam fell further and further into the depths. His scream barely registered in my ears before I heard it. That nauseating thump that still lives in my nightmares. Words can't express how horrified I was. Adam had been standing beside me one moment, then the next he was just gone. Panic surged through me as the severity of the situation finally sank in. Hey Adam, are you okay? I shouted, my voice shaky. I waited for a reply that I knew wasn't going to come. Only silence emanated from the crevice until it didn't. I was about to run for help when I heard something. A faint, wet, ripping noise like flesh being stripped from bone drifted up from the trench. I stood rooted to the spot. A dizzying cocktail of curiosity and dread settled into my stomach as I strained my ears to listen. And then, just as quickly as they had started, the noises stopped. My heart nearly leapt out of my chest when a new sound broke the silence. MEX. Adam's voice called my name. I should have been relieved to hear that, but I wasn't. It felt wrong. The inflection wasn't quite right, and the letters were spoken too far apart. It sounded like something was mimicking Adam, something that was just learning how to use his voice. I found myself unable to speak. I couldn't run. I couldn't scream. I couldn't look away. All I could do was keep my eyes glued to the darkness as a low scuffling met my ears. It didn't take long for me to realize what that noise was coming from. It sounded as if something was scaling the side of the trench. Something big. And after what felt like an eternity, I was proven right. A hand grasped the soil beside my feet, finding purchase on the edge of the drop-off. Another hand followed, and soon, a head poked up from the abyss. I watched as Adam hoisted himself up, brushed the dirt off of his pants, and grinned at me. I can't explain how in that moment, but I knew with 100% certainty that the boy standing beside me was not my brother. He didn't look any different. No noticeable changes aside from a bit of smeared blood at the side of his mouth. But his eyes, there was a manic darkness in them that wasn't there before. Like something sinister lurked just below the surface. What's wrong, Max? Why didn't you answer? I thought you left, Adam said, gazing at me expectantly. How what? Adam asked, cocking his head to the side like a curious dog. The longer Adam stared at me, the more uneasy I became. It felt as if we were playing a game of cat and mouse, and he'd back me into a corner. Itch, how did you climb back up? How are you standing here right now? I watched you fall. My blood turned to ice as Adam smirked at me again. It wasn't that deep. I didn't get hurt, see, he said, spinning around. I didn't have time to react before his body stiffened. and he turned in the direction of our house. "It's getting dark. We should go home." And with that, he took off into a dead sprint, leaving me standing there to process what I just seen. ********** Mom and dad either didn't notice or they chalked it up to Adam getting older. But I knew there were too many subtle imperfections to miss. The way he ate all of his peas when he used to hate them. How he didn't put up a fuss when brushing his teeth. Wearing his glasses when he used to abhor the thought. But the worst, most significant change happened at night. I was terrified to sleep in the same room as Adam. I had begged our parents to let me spend the night on the couch or on the floor in their bedroom, but they wouldn't allow it. Just the thought of being stuck alone with him nearly brought me to tears. I tried to avoid looking at him, to hide under the covers and pretend that everything was okay. I prayed that I would make it through the night without incident, but that didn't happen. I was trembling under the covers, trying to calm my nerves when I heard it. Something skittered across the floor. Then, I felt a presence looming over me. I can't explain how I knew that he was there. I could just feel him hovering, watching me. I held my breath, too scared to utter so much as a peep. And then he spoke. Warm, musty breath seeped through the covers and into my ear. It reeked of rot and decay, the smell of death. I wanted to gag, but I was frozen in fear as the words registered. "I know that you know. Keep your mouth shut, and I won't have to hurt you." Then, he scampered away, back to his side of the room. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I was too on edge to let my guard down for even a second. Mom and Dad commented on how tired I looked, but I brushed them off. Adam was lurking in the background, eyeing me, waiting for me to slip up. But I was careful, and for the next month, it turned my life into a living nightmare. I was constantly exhausted. My grades took a nosedive. My relationships suffered. People noticed. Mom and Dad took me to a doctor, but he recommended more sleep and melatonin. That did the trick for a while, until the night that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I was fast asleep thanks to the medication. When something woke me up, I immediately knew what it was. I was paralyzed with dread the moment my eyes opened. Adam was standing directly over me. He wasn't whispering, just standing there, still as a statue. His expression was blank, and those eyes, they looked dead, like the eyes of a fish. We stayed there for what felt like an eternity. Adam looming over me, while I lay in bed, too afraid to even blink. Then, without saying a word, Adam dropped to the floor. I could hear him crawling, shuffling on the hardwood, but I couldn't see him. That terrified me more than anything, not knowing where he was. I wouldn't have to worry about that for long, because a moment later, his face popped up at the foot of my bed. Those cold, lifeless eyes held me in their gaze. I couldn't look away, even for a second. And just when I thought that my heart might explode out of my chest, Adam's face disappeared from view again. I could hear him. He was crawling beneath my bed. His nails scratched the floor as he dragged his body forward. I kept expecting his arm to shoot up from the darkness, for broken fingernails to rake across my flesh and choke the life from my veins. But that didn't happen. Instead, Adam stayed there, lying still. An eerie silence blanketed the room once again, and the only audible noise in the entire house was Adam's ragged breathing directly below my head. Then, a wet gurgle seeped up through the bed frame. "I'm going to come back for you someday. You'll end up just like him." I stayed awake for hours, those words rattling in my head, waiting for the moment that he would choose to end my life. But although my heart hammered harder than it ever had before and the adrenaline running through my system was enough to put down a horse, I must have drifted off to sleep eventually. Because the next thing I remember, I opened my eyes to find Mom frantically shaking me awake. Max, wake up. Where's your brother?" I groggily sat up, rubbing my eyes, until the events from the previous night came crashing down on me like a freight train. I trembled as I met my mother's worried gaze, and summoning all of my strength, I pointed down below the bed. Mom didn't respond. She knelt, leaving me holding my breath, shaking uncontrollably, expecting a clawed, gnarled hand to grab her at any moment. But it didn't. Instead, Mom's face began to turn red as she re-emerged. "Max, this isn't funny. Your brother is missing, and now is not the time for practical jokes." Those words, They were like music to my ears. I know how messed up that is. I know that I should have been concerned. This was my little brother, for fuck's sake. I should have felt some kind of worry or panic or fear. But I didn't. Instead, I felt a sense of overwhelming relief. Backslash asterisk, backslash asterisk, backslash asterisk. They found Adam's body the next day. His corpse was lying in the trench, where he'd fallen over a month prior. The coroner was perplexed. According to him, Adam's body showed signs that it had been deteriorating for weeks. The level of decay was too advanced for him to have died mere hours earlier. To this day, I still can't explain what that thing was or what happened to my brother. Sometimes it feels like a twisted fever dream, but I know that what I experienced all those years ago was real. And I'm convinced that whatever took over my Adam's body that day is still out there. Last night, while staying in my parents' house for the first time in months, I visited the crevice. I don't know why I did it. I think part of me still needed closure. But that's not what I found. Because as I stared into the darkness, I swear that I heard Adam's voice calling my name from the abyss. Even now, it's inside my head, beckoning me. I know that whatever controlled Adam then has made good on its promise. I don't know how much time I've left, but I know it won't be long before I join it in the dark and let it take me. https://www.reddit.com/r/horrorjunkie123. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.